Should we do this Ben Shapiro feud? So Tucker Carlson is desperate again for just some sort of relevance. Fox News has proven this many times, that they're the machine that makes the man. When Bill O'Reilly was ousted for sexual harassment, he started his own thing and no one cared anymore. But at the time, he was the biggest thing on Fox News. Tucker Carlson forced out at Fox News because of these outrageous claims that he was making on his program that got them in some legal liability. And he's now desperately trying to make this partnership with Elon Musk's social media platform that's also a video platform in this vision work. And I guess maybe this is independent at this point. He's really struggling to gain some footing. And so
independent, I mean, it's for Elon Musk.
Right.
Like this idea that, fuck it, we're independent media. Like I'm so sick of people who are paid by Cantor Fitzgerald Acquisition Corporation number 6 or Rumble, or like they have direct relationships. And like, look, I think even when we were, even though we were licensing it or whatever, like even the Peacock thing, that was like, we were less independent, just objectively speaking, when that was the case.
Yeah.
So these people who like, and what I want to, I'll button it is, they now say legacy media because they can't say corporate media because they are literal corporations.
Corporate media. I mean, Joe Rogan, $250 million from Spotify. What is that? A co-op?
So now it's legacy media to differentiate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now don't worry. It's big tech overlords versus like media conglomerates. Amazing.
Actual journalists.
Yes. So what does Tucker Carlson do when he really can't get a ton of attention? Oh, start a feud. And here he is going after Ben Shapiro.
I've got 4 draft age children. So if you're playing recklessly fast and loose with their lives, then I have a right to despise you.
Okay,
and
pause
I do.
What a joke. First of all, I do not want the United States getting involved in another war. That is in part why we are so strong in opposition to U.S. support for Israel's massacre in Gaza. Tucker, you are the heir of the Swanson food fortune. You went from Swiss, Sam recounts this much better than me, but Swiss boarding school to private school for flunking out and then going to Trinity College and having things handed to you your entire life. We do not have conscription in this country anymore. Your children are not getting drafted, even if we did, because you would find a way to get them out of it as a rich guy. So I hate his cosplaying as the everyman, which he stole from Bill O'Reilly, by the way.
Yeah. What it does is it's you can only care about something if it's your family. This is like fascist patriarchy to a T. And it's absolutely appalling that so many people will like to carry water for this guy, that he's some sort of anti-war libertarian. It's like, how much money is being spent and why is it on me procreating to make more white kids?
Yeah.
I've got 4 draft age children. So if you're playing recklessly fast and loose with their lives, then I have a right to despise you. And I do. So if you're Nikki Haley, who's running for president, or Ben Shapiro, or half the people I see on television casually mentioning the possibility of nuclear war or sending Americans to fight in the Middle East, or in any way involving us in a war that has nothing to do with prosperity and peace at home, nothing, in other words, to do with us, Americans, then I have a right to call you out and be really offended because it's my family. They live here. It's not a joke to me. There's nothing abstract about it. I've got...
Yeah, I mean,
nothing to do with us. We restock Iron Dome, restock their ammunition. It absolutely has something to do with us. We should have something to say about it beyond just like, what does this mean for my fucking kids?
Yeah, the reason that I'm in opposition to supporting Israel is because of the outcomes and what they're doing, is because of the settler colonial state and because of the genocide that they're committing. It's not because oh, this hurts my bottom line, or in theory, my children are going to get conscripted into a war to fight. That's stupid. So dumb. And it's a good example of, as you say, Matt, like the hollowness of right-wing libertarian anti-war principles. But this is his way to differentiate himself. He's trying to brand himself in a different way than other right-wing commentators. And so Ben Shapiro did end up responding to this. He had a tweet, and then I guess he responded as well on air, if I'm not mistaken. Tucker, here we go. This is an opportunity to flex my Ben Shapiro voice. Tucker is simply lying about my positions. I've been calling for a negotiated end to the Ukraine war, freezing the lines of conflict since early on in the war. I have never called for an American boots on the ground in Ukraine, ever. I have never called for American boots to defend Israel, ever. I've invited Tucker to sit down multiple times over the past few weeks to clear the air and discuss our differences. He said he's willing, but his team has told us that he's busy for months because of all the foreign travel. That offer remains open. That's funny. That's funny in and of itself. And then he also responded as well on his show. Let's get to that. Or was this his show? Yeah. So he was on the...
No, it's not. Is it what I put in there? Or
I have
Ben Shapiro's. Oh, what? Well, you're getting his... oh, you got that.
You want to watch
No, it's what Emma wanted.
12, yeah. 12. Okay. Yeah, so he said that tweet, and then he also responded on air.
And I will just say, Tucker had, I believe, I'm looking for the exact language, but did call for a ceasefire. So Ben's right. That is there. But the thing is
what I wanted
we'll
to
get
react to.
Yeah.
That about Gaza.
Policy with regard to Israel and Gaza. And this part of the interview is rather stunning. So he suggests that America's role with regard to Israel and Gaza should be to force Israel to stop its killing of Hamas members and its attempts to defend its own borders. Here was, and he, in fact, he goes further. He suggests that America is evil for not doing that. Here was Tucker in Dubai.
Sir, do you have an explanation till this moment, since the Gaza events took place, till now, nobody came out and said how on earth the United States of America is vetoing the stoppage of fire, how a country would veto not to continue war, how somebody is against stopping a war.
The United States is, for this moment, is the most powerful country in the history of the world. So if you were to frame this in terms we're all familiar with, which are the most basic terms, the terms of the family, the United States would be dad, would be the father. And the father's sacred obligation is to protect his family and to restore peace within his walls.
As Matt says,
so if I come home, I have 4 children.
Pause it for a second.
Work.
So first of all, for Tucker,
Pause it.
it was posited that the United
Okay. No,
States really has no interest in things that go on outside of its borders in large scale.
All right, go back a little.
Be suggesting...
So if I come home, I have 4 children.
Pause it for a second. So first of all, for Tucker, who has posited that the United States really has no interest in things that go on outside of its borders in large scale, to be suggesting a familial analogy here is already very strange. At the very least, it's strange. The idea of America as world father is extremely imperialist. That America is basically out to dominate every... I mean, it sounds Wilsonian almost. That it is the job of America to impose its will wherever humanly possible. I mean, I think that's a proposition that Tucker disagrees with. So it's strange to use an analogy where America is the father and its job as America is to restore peace everywhere on the globe. First of all,
so
start with that.
There's a little bit of sophistry going on here. Like when Tucker, it's funny, like they're both taking like sort of lefty sort of postures towards this thing, but they're
subverting it with their own real ideology.
Like let him go a little bit further.
Well, I mean, to pause for a second, Tucker saying I'm against this war because of this fascist ideology that I have about fatherdom, right? I mean, and you can just see.
But nonetheless, there should be a ceasefire. So staking out that position,
exactly,
but doing it for because it's the fathers,
right?
All fathers who stand for their kids.
Staking out that position when there are no stakes. Like again, these are two guys that are arguing about a position that's completely non-actionable within the Republican Party whatsoever.
Exactly. So he's pro ceasefire, but Ben Shapiro is anti-imperialist because he's saying what you're saying America should be. Well, actually, like Ben, the logic scientist, whatever New York Times called him, like Tucker wasn't really saying that. He was saying he was being more descriptive than prescriptive.
Right.
He's saying what it is and not what ought to be. And it is true that America is the most powerful country in the world. I don't think is there another country that is running for that right now? Just in terms of particularly militarily, definitely. Yes. And so but it's funny how the right recognizes that they have to take these sort of left-wing. They have to garb themselves almost in a left-wing argument because those are the arguments that are actually right.
Yes, and particularly because I think they're both trying to appeal to a younger audience.
That Tucker disagrees with. So it's strange to use an analogy where America is the father and its job as America is to restore peace everywhere on the globe. First of all, just start with that. That's weird. But the analogy continues.
So if I come home, I have 4 children. If I come home from work and 2 of my kids are fighting, what's the first thing I do? Even before I assess why they're fighting, before I gather the facts and know what's happening, I say, stop fighting.
Just to unpack this, we all need to take it off the screen, but both are my children, okay? Again, this is why it is Shapiro's right in this way, fascist propaganda. Because, no, Palestinians are not my children. The Middle East, the continent of Africa, the other places where U.S. imperial power is is imposing itself mostly right now, they're not my children. They're their own sovereign actors with their own desires and incentives and agency. This is a scary way to view the world, and one that is based in imperialism and like weird religious might equals right arguments, which is the entire basis of Israel's existence. Yeah. The entire basis of Israel's existence is imperialism, Western imperialism. So now, I mean, he's saying that it's weird that Tucker's making this case because honestly, Ben Shapiro, that is your ideology.
Yeah. Also, we should point out it's selective when Tucker makes the case because while I do think we should, push for diplomacy and all these other sorts of things. If you're going to impose a familial analogy onto Ukraine-Russia, it is kind of what he's talking about is a bigger kid's beating up a smaller one that may have some friends far away that are helping it.
Yeah.
But those friends far away are getting a little bit less eager to help it. So like, right, like this is just not the way to talk about this, but just to point out that it is selective when Tucker does want to impose a familial analogy.
And they can't use practical realities. They have to use this.
Yes. So if I come home and I have 2 kids fighting and I say, go, beat the crap out of them, I am evil. Because I've violated the most basic duty of fatherhood, which is to bring peace. Because I have the power. I'm the only one who can bring peace. And so if you see a nation with awesome power abetting war for its own sake, you have a leadership that has no moral authority, that is illegitimate. And I'm very distressed and concerned that we are entering an era where this awesome force for good is instead being used for evil.
Again, like, sorry.
Fascist propaganda.
But again, yeah, exactly. Like, how do people... I understand how naive people understand that's like a left-wing view, but like that is from somebody who, like, again, Tucker's dad worked for Voice of America. He's been in Rupert Murdoch media for decades. That this guy's just now being starting to be concerned about this sort of thing is it's a show.
Oh, he's the anti-imperialist guy that, as Putin pointed out, you applied to be a part of the CIA, did you not? And you got rejected. I mean, so like this guy is not.
This is like how the Twitter files were like the internet used to be a place where everything was utopian, and actually, like, no, you read like Yasha Levine, and the internet was always a part of imperial propaganda, and actually, that's really one of the fundamental problems with how this whole movement from Tucker, all this sort of thing, as they try to like molt out of their right-wing skin into some sort of new type of reactionary progressive, it doesn't work.
This awesome force for good is instead being used for evil.
Okay, so he says America is effectively evil for not promoting a ceasefire, leaving Hamas, a terrorist group, in control.
Okay, pause it. That's not what he said.
He said it's been great and it risks becoming evil if we don't change course. So, actually.
Okay.
For not promoting a ceasefire, leaving Hamas, a terrorist group, in control of the Gaza Strip.
Zionists are also
using this familial analogy. So again, there are 1,000 problems with this familial analogy, just on the face of it. Number one, Hamas is not part of the family of nations. Okay, so even if you were to accept Tucker's analogy that America is somehow great father in the sky that rules foreign policy all over the globe and has a role in ending every war, which I know Tucker does not agree with. Even if you accept that analogy, the next question is, are these children both yours? Because I'm pretty much clear on the idea that Israel is an American ally, an incredibly pro-American democracy in the region that provides pretty significant intelligence support to the United States.
Well,
and that Hamas is a terrorist group. So those are not if you were to carry this analogy realistically, it would be the
we have to
father of
pause
one.
for impressionable kids.
Both my children are
State of
terrorists.
Terror. Here's a book recommendation for people. State of Terror by Tom Suarez. Terrorism as a tactic is foundational to the state of Israel, and also not only back then. Israel. The fact is that terrorism is occurring on both sides. A lot of people are doing it, but frankly, more so and with better backing and more material behind it, support behind it on the Zionist side. That is just objective reality, and I don't even know if that's a reality that even Tucker is willing to go.
Oh, well,
is Tucker willing to admit that?
Or terrorism as fundamentally a creation of imperial violence.
Right. Well, exactly. Like how we categorize it. Exactly. Like literally, you look at Algeria or any sort of colonial environment, and terrorism is a response, obviously, to colonial subjugation. It's not to say it's the one we salute. It's just to say this is when we do get natural.
Yeah.
This is when I get natural, because there's never been a colonial project that has occurred without this sorts of unrest. And so, do you put it down with violence, or do you stop the project? And my vote is to stop the project.
Yeah. So agreed on that front. And then also just the fact that we're not even able to contradict his premise that he's relying his whole argument on, which is a false one, that Israel is fighting Hamas. That's not the case. 29,000 confirmed. It's much higher than that. Dead civilians at this point. Or dead Palestinians at this point. A tiny fraction of that are Hamas, and a majority of the dead are women and children.
This might scandalize some streamers, but objectively speaking, when you talk about diplomacy, and I can have citation for you. I believe India's diplomat, but it literally said, Hamas, the idea that Hamas equals terrorist organization is imperial propaganda.
Yeah.
Hamas is a resistance organization that does resort to terrorism on occasions, and that is something that's bad. We don't like terrorism here. But again, if we're gonna you can't disqualify Hamas for terrorism and then leave Israel. If terrorist acts are disqualifying, then there would be no Israel.
Yep.
Country, meaning the father, and then any associated child would be presumably an American ally in this particular analogy, and then you would have a foreign child coming in and murdering 1,200 of the citizens of your child.
How about 29,000?
Beyond that, let's just take his analogy straight. If you were the father and you walked into your home, and I'm father of 4, and one of your children had stabbed the other child in the eyeball, which is what happened on October 7th. Your first move would presumably
back
not
up here? Sorry, this is actually more fun than I thought about thinking about this in familiar terms. Imagine if the one that stabbed the other in the eyeball had been kept in a cage in the basement and in the attic. There was 2 of them actually. Kept one in the attic, a little bit more area to move around, and one just in a cage in the fucking basement. That. Then you think, hey, you know what? Maybe this thing where we have the kid caged in the basement.
Yeah.
Maybe that's actually putting even the other kids at risk too.
Yeah.
And maybe we need a more equitable and a more just living arrangement in this fucking crazy house we're keeping.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm father of 4, and one of your children had stabbed the other child in the eyeball, which is what happened on October 7th. Your first move would presumably not be to sit everyone down and find out how this had started by stopping the conflict. Some shit would get real, because you would be the enforcement mechanism against that sort of thing.
Yeah. All right.
You as the father are the
Pause
enforcement.
for a sec, because actually, Ben, you know what would be good parenting in that instance? Would be to sit your kids down and say,
to beat the violent child.
let's have some reconciliation here and say, why is this bad? My sister...
Can we get to the hospital? They could fucking
my sister and I never stabbed each other in the eyeballs, but we'd have some we got physical or whatever, we'd push each other around, and my mother's reaction was let's sit down and talk about why this is wrong, what the root of the issue was. I know. But I guess
I'm never home with them because I'm cutting YouTube videos about Barbie movies. But
all right, keep going.
So, in other words, he would be calling for interventionism. Now, again, the entire analogy doesn't make any sense. Israel is an independent country. Hamas is an independent polity. The United States has its own interests. Those interests don't align always with either group that is being discussed at this point. But the notion that America is evil for facilitating Israel's care on its own borders to destroy a terrorist group that just murdered 1,200 of its citizens is pretty...
It's like every time a bomb goes and blows a Palestinian child's head off and incinerates a grandma, that's a care package.
Yeah, what we have, this is beautiful. It's like when a super fast computer, something hits a process that takes a few more cycles to deal with than you used to, and it slows down. So Ben Shapiro, usually a very fast talker, pauses, searching for a term, and he lands on care on the border, which we should almost make fucking t-shirts.
So you want to talk about fascist propaganda, fascist mythology when you're murdering people at like
care on the border,
hundreds a day. That's just taking care of
on the border.
Yeah,
go ahead, Bradley.
It's gardening. Well, mowing the lawn
for facilitating Israel's care on its own borders to destroy a terrorist group that just murdered 1,200 of its citizens is pretty. I mean, that's pretty stunning stuff. And it does line up with a sort of broader tenor to Tucker's view of America's role in the world, which is that America historically and currently...
Just good point from T-Bone. You don't have to take it. Actually, I'm telling myself that. IDF's intelligence is so valuable. How the hell did Hamas successfully sneak attack them on October 7th? Yeah, exactly. And, anyway.
I mean, that's pretty stunning stuff. And it does line up with a sort of broader tenor to Tucker's view of America's role in the world, which is that America historically and currently has been apparently a fairly negative force in the world.
Not what he said at all.
I say that not just because of what he's saying about what's happening in Gaza.
Because Tucker's like he's retconning his Iraq war position and like kind of apologizing for it. But sorry Ben, sorry that people are like abandoning you on the Iraq war.
He's just trying to mainstream like a paleoconservative brand.
Yeah.
That's basically it, even though it's completely not sincere.
I say that not just because of what he's saying about what's happening in Gaza or American support for Ukraine or any of that. He did an interview with Russell Brand, and that came out fairly recently, in which he was talking about World War II. And what he suggested is that America was bad during World War II because America had engaged in what he called collective punishment. Now, let's be clear about what America did during World War II. In, for example, the firebombing of Dresden, which was in fact a manufacturing center, or the firebombing of Tokyo, which was a military center, or in the bombing of Hiroshima.
That the Zionist
Tokyo's a military center.
The Zionist apologist keeps calling places a legitimate military target, despite the presence of a large amount of civilians there. Interesting.
Okay, even American generals and those who, I mean, if we're talking about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, then who were debating the dropping of the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, understood that it was about inflicting a massive civilian death toll in order to create, like, devastation to the Japanese government and force their hand on that front. So even, like, his analysis here also is contradictory to, like, what the stated goals of the U.S. were in our indefensible dropping of those bombs.
And I will just say, and I'm not an expert on World War II history, but I have seen arguments made, and I think this is actually correct, but I'm interested in more World War II folks because I know certain people take that very seriously. But I believe Churchill bombed civilians indiscriminately before the Nazis did the Blitz on the UK indiscriminately. If I'm wrong on that, I take correction, but I think that Churchill broke the seal, as it were, on bombing civilians indiscriminately. So it's actually Tucker. I award provisionally this point to Tucker so far.
Or the firebombing of Tokyo, which was a military center, or in the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki at the end of World War II. America was attempting to win a war and forestalling American casualties therein. So if you are America first and you wish for America to win wars in which it is engaged without getting a lot of Americans killed, sometimes you have to do really, really ugly things.
I agree with that. If you're America first, you shouldn't be.
I think most Americans understand that and historically have understood that, particularly the grandchildren of the people who did not die invading the mainland of Japan because of the dropping of the atomic bombs, for example. Military estimates suggested that 1 million Americans could die in the invasion of Japan if it had been an amphibious assault as opposed to the dropping of atomic weaponry over Japan in August of 45.
All pretty hotly debated.
But here was
Can you
Tucker
also pause
talking
it?
about
atomic weapon. We got to wrap. I mean, like
Yeah.
they're going through, but we understand now where these stupid distinctions that they're drawing. When in actuality, they both support the Republican Party, which is full of war hawks, and so they'll do this dance.
But the supremacy was there when he said like they were concerned about no Americans dying. So like
Yeah.
how many who gives a shit about how many Japanese we kill?
that is the through line, honestly. I think
Very honest.
overall between them both.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the dropping of atomic weaponry, it is with the care.
If
on
you're
the
doing border
border
care, if
yeah.
you're doing some border care in Japan, and you need to drop a fat man and little boy,
weaponry. Yeah.
for some border care.
Yeah. It's like amazing how this supposed facts and logic guy does so many linguistic flourishes
Yeah.
to obscure the fact that he's talking about the massacre of hundreds of thousands of civilians when it comes to the dropping of the bombs in Japan, and the now tens of thousands that have been killed in less than 5 months in Gaza.
Another good point from our chat, and I just missed who put this, but like, yeah, if you're calling Tokyo and there's places like military targets, what does that make Pearl Harbor?
Yeah.